So, um, I thought I would give you a little bit of idea of some of the things that I was able to create. Why is it I know what I know? What is my purpose? And um, I do believe it's about sharing this information, sharing this side of, the abuse, because this is what's happening. When I look at something, I see if it's repeatable. And when you want to find the solution, you sort of go outside your bubble to see if it works from all sides. And when you see a problem with that, you got to increase your bubble a little more and look at it from a different perspective. And a lot of things is um, the problem with abuse within our families is it's being supported by everybody out there. So I can't really communicate with other members of my family when they're being brainwashed into perpetuating the same events over and over again. One example of that is my ex husband, who hasn't paid any of his child support and has, this need to get my children to be totally against me. Um, when we first split up, he was influenced heavily by the guys he worked with. They'd all say, watch it, she's going to take you for everything you got. So right away, most fathers, and there is that reality that there are a lot of mothers, and I've crossed paths with them, that just bleed these men dry. And they can't get on with their lives. Meanwhile, their wives are living in nice big homes and having the best of life. It does exist where women, losers always win, and women's rights ended up getting different laws made out where it's a lot easier for women to take advantage of men. And if there is the other side of abuse, can be men as well. And part of this divorce war that we're dealing with is we'll never solve that problem because it's a he said, she said. There's a war between men and women and mothers and fathers. And we're not really recognizing there's a war between, the parent that's dealing with a lot of bad shit and the one that's taking advantage and not caring for the children. So nobody's really paying attention to what's in the best interest of children. We're too busy fighting this war and we're inside the war. So we're not looking at the bigger picture. So um, that's part of what I'm seeing. My purpose is that um, not only is it I'm supposed to change my family dynamic, but it's got to be a global thing because our court systems all operate by the way we want to live our world. There are more fathers out there that are being bled dry, and there are judges and lawyers, and so they will tend to view things from their perspective and always try and protect and make laws so it supports the bad side to get away with what they want to get away with. um, I hope that makes some sense, but um, there's no way that my husband could have gotten away with what he did if he didn't have a government system supporting him. He didn't have to pay his income tax because Revenue Canada doesn't care. They say they care. There's agencies out there. You can make complaints. But when you make your complaint, they say we've investigated and found nothing wrong. And it's like, wait a minute. How can, here are the pay stubs. How come he doesn't have to pay taxes on that or get a tax return that I can use that says this is your actual income that you're actually paying income tax on? So there's a gap between the amount of income I can prove that my ex is making, but it's totally different in what he's reporting to Revenue Canada. And we've set up our corporate worlds where, these guys that are, if you have stay-at-home mothers and or vice versa, and they run companies to support their families. Well, it's very easy for them to set up a company or work for another company that's going to make them have a very low looking income, and they have a lot of tax shelters and I mean, you can set up a business in a completely different country, make billions of dollars, and not pay one dime in income tax, and look to the government that you're poor as shit. And you have a whole pile of kids that you don't have to support because you can go to court because you can afford the big lawyers that say you're living in poverty. And, if the other side that's living in poverty can't afford a lawyer, then legal aid is underfunded. They're not getting paid enough to read your file, so no information is being presented to a judge. A judge just looks at you as though you're crying and stressed that you must be a very abusive parent, and we're not even going to listen to a word you have to say. So, anybody that wants to say there's a justice system, if you participate, if you solve any of your problems by going to court, then you support a system that's going to work against me just as much as it's going to work against you. We've been hearing farmers lose their farms by these big corporations taking over their land that's been in their families for years and generations. And we've been hearing this is going on, but we really didn't do anything. There was no support, for these farmers. We just, well, there's nothing we can do. But we do need to take some responsibility that if you walk into any courthouse, if you go get yourself a lawyer in any way, shape, or form, you're in agreement that this system works. And you're supporting a system that doesn't work by participating in it. If you can go in and say this system is not perfect and you do not want to risk um, an unjust decision, and there's a higher rate that they're going to make unjust decisions, and these unjust decisions, they're allowed to do that because they say, well, if, you just didn't like a judge's decision. And it's like, well, wait a minute, I'm a mother where the kids live, I should be collecting child support, so according to our Canadian laws, I should be the one collecting it and not paying it. And definitely not during a time that I'm collecting welfare, because it's welfare's mandate to go after child support. So from my perspective, um, the way the laws are set up, it's not the way the laws are working. And yet they want me to constantly go back into court, which I've done for 9 years. It clearly does not work. I clearly do not like their judges' decisions, and they want me to live in a nightmare of perpetual hell by, it's like insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. And it's like, how many times do you got to go to court before you realize, every time you go to court, you lose years off your life, you get a decision that's not just, and you end up paying more money in the long run, and you lose a lot more in the long run. So I'm not really going back to those courts, but I do have a story to tell, and I can pretty much prove that our justice system can't find justice because it can't receive the information that it needs. So um, it's one thing to communicate or not communicate this problem with my family. But the bigger problem is nobody's sort of making anybody be responsible or accountable by you participating in these systems that don't function. If you stop participating in them and you took a different direction, then you change it for me and you change it for yourself, and the motivation will show up to create a completely different system that does work. But it's like, if you want to play a game that's not fair and you keep playing the game all the time, then expect it not to be fair. So all sides of abuse, all sides of war have to kind of recognize the game that we're playing just isn't working, and we need to come up with new games. And part of that is perceive yourself that you are the master of your own game. Stop worrying about what other people think. Like I've got to do. I can't really get to a point where, okay, my family's going to hate my guts. Obviously, they want a mother that's doing this, and they need to hold responsibility and accountability. What's inside them that's making their mother tell this kind of story? And I will take responsibility. My kids will probably hate me, but they're very brilliant children. If they don't want to repeat a pattern, then if they're mad, that madness is on them, and I wish them well, and I hope they aren't mad. But that's sort of the perpetual thing that's going on. It's when you can feel love in your heart, then you kind of know you got it. And that's what I'm wishing for my kids and my family, that they can receive this information with love and we can get along.